My family was driving home from vacation, Mother's Day, 1980. Three grandparents, my father, my mother, and me. We were hit by a drunk driver going over 60 miles per hour, head on.
I'm going to try to recall what happened to me right after the wreck. I'm pretty sure my heart had stopped because there were people that was from the scene of the wreck that said that the two people up in the front seat were dead. And they were making no attempt to try to get me and Jim out of the car, and the others were already out of the car. So I'm pretty sure that I was dead for a while. It's Today's date is November the 7th of 1988, so it has been a while, and some of the sequence in which it actually happened, I don't really remember. But I'm going to try to, as close as I can, describe what happened to me when my heart stopped. It's something I thought I would really never forget, and certain aspects of it I probably never will, but some of the details, just like with everything else, time kind of fades away, so I'm going to try to do the best I can. Well, I guess the first thing, actually, I didn't think I remembered any of the wreck. It was a bad experience, but when I was in the hospital, right afterwards, I would have, every time I would doze off and try to sleep, it was like I was reliving the whole thing all over again. And it would get so bad that my heart would almost stop beating in the hospital, and the doctors and nurses would have to come work with me. But it was like I was out of my body watching me in the wreck in slow motion. I remember the car seemed like it hit once and then bounced back and then hit again. The first time it hit, I went up to the left side and I broke the rear view mirror off. Then I bounced back and then I bounced to the right side, cracking the window in the side of the glass in the door. The third time I bounced back and I drove the sun visor through the windshield with my head. No one had ever explained to me what the car had looked like at that time, so there was no way I could have known because I could not even see clearly at the scene of the wreck. I had triple vision. My eyes were just seeing through red what I could see. I couldn't see much. So there's no way I really could have known this. And then later, somebody had took some pictures of the wrecked car. I had not seen the pictures when I had told of this experience. But just like I had told, and I had relived in the dream, oh, and everything was in slow motion. It was like I was watching me in slow motion in the car. I was gasping for breath. I could not breathe. It was a horrible experience. When I would relive it, it was just seemed like that it was such a horrible experience. I couldn't even live it, just reliving it, that my heart was going to stop. But I was watching the whole thing in slow motion. But when I got the pictures back from the car wreck, it was just as I had said. I had broke off the rearview mirror, I had busted the glass on the right side, plus I had drove the visor through the windshield. I could have not known this any other way than to have been out observing it. The next stage I think I went through was kind of like a dark tunnel. It seemed like I was being drawn kind of rapidly through a long, dark tunnel. Every once in a while, at the end, I could see like a flicker of light. And the faster I was being drawn through it, I could see more and more light toward the end. During this time, I think, at least it was sometime during the experience, I did know at the time of the wreck, and I should have wrote it down then, but I think it was while I was going through the tunnel, that it was kind of like a playback of my life. It was, well, it's hard to describe how it really happened because with all the great detail involved in my mind comprehending what was happening, it would have took probably several hours to have reviewed what all was going through my head, but it was like everything was in fast motion and my mind was comprehending everything I was seeing almost like at once within a matter of seconds instead of within a matter of hours it would have took my human body to have understood these things. But it was like I started out as a little girl. I saw things that had happened to me all through my years, on up until the present time. But it all was in great detail that I understood, but it was just in a matter of seconds. It was really in fast motion. The next step I went through, I guess, was kind of coming toward the end of the tunnel where the light had already started to get very brighter. And it seemed like during this time, there were others out there. They didn't have humanly bodies. I really couldn't see them as people here on earth, but I knew who they were, and they knew who I was. And this experience was kind of going on in a matter of very colorful lights or objects, or there's no earthly words to describe this stage that I went through. It's like you knew the people were there and they were comforting you. But as far as describing the surroundings, it was beyond words in human language. There is nothing like it on earth. It was colors, shapes, but nothing as colors and shapes here on earth. And there was like a celestial type music or tone. It wasn't music like harps or guitars or trumpets. That's earthly things. This was a sound that I really couldn't describe. It was, as I again say, that there's nothing on earth that would describe the sound, but they were beautiful. It was just a real beautiful sound. It was kind of like, almost like choirs singing, but yet they weren't really singing. But you could tell that there was like several together. It was maybe like the vibrations coming off energy sources or something, but yet it was harmonized. And during this time where I saw the others and saw the lights and heard the beautiful noises, it's during this time I felt a comfort that was really undescribable too. It was like you realized you were out of the burden of the body. You go through day-to-day life and little aches and pains, you just take for granted and go on. Matter of fact, you don't even really pay that much attention to even your hurting or your body's tensed up or the pain in your back, the pain in your foot, whatever's bothering you, you just learn to live with and you don't pay it that much attention. But once you're out, once you're free of your body, it's like the burden of the body is gone. It's like you're so free, so comfortable. There's no aches, no pains, no sorrows. It's just like total freedom of the spirit. You just don't realize the burden of the body until you're free of it. But once you're free of it, it just feels so great that it just is hard really to describe that. It's just the most wonderful feeling that you can possibly ever have. During this stage, it seemed like I stayed in it for a while. I was still kind of floating and moving towards something, but I was still drifting within these colors and sounds in this inner peace. But as I went further and further, I saw a bright, brilliant light. It was such a clean, white light, so radiant. It was not something that would blind you. It was not something that would make your eyes hurt. You'd have to look away from. But it was just a brilliant, radiant light. Just very bright and white. And I was coming toward this. And I don't remember too much what happened in this stage, but I do remember when I reached the light, it felt so good and so warm. I didn't want to leave it. It was just great. You just felt warm and comforted. It seemed like your troubles were gone. There was just no reason that I would wanted to turn back at all. But something happened during this light, and I don't know if I remembered it at the time or not, but after this many years have gone by, I don't really recall what happened at the light, but at the light, something made me turn around against my will and start falling and dropping back toward my body. And I was so disturbed about having to do this. I did not want to. It seemed like I was reaching out and trying to hold on to the light. And I kept dropping and falling and dropping and falling, knowing all the time I was headed back to my earthly body. And I was in a rage almost. I did not want it to happen. I just wanted to stay in the light. But something that happened during the light had sent me back. And when I woke up in my earthly body, I can just remember being so mad about having to return. It was like I didn't want to return. But that is as close as I can come to telling what happened during my near-death experience after the wreck. It's something that was just really wondrous to experience. And it seemed like after I was back in the human body, and after some time had elapsed, accepting Jim's death, that I had a different outlook toward death. Things didn't scare me like they used to. Before the wreck, I was afraid to drive a car. I was afraid of thunderstorms. I was afraid of death. There was just so many things that I was just totally afraid of before I experienced all this. But going through this experience made me not fear death anymore. I don't know what it will be like as the years dims the experience. I may go back to where I fear it again. But after I had experienced that, while it was still fresh in my mind, I did not fear death. I did not fear storms. I got to where I was driving, and that didn't even really scare me. It was just like that part of the being had comforted me and had changed my life. And still to this day, I'm not the person I was before the wreck. Like my personality had been changed forever. And I think part of it is due to this experience I went through.
My mother struggled the rest of her life trying to recover. Trauma does not end after the accident. Some wounds cannot heal properly without help. The daily foundation was formed through God and family to break the cycle of trauma that happens after these devastating wrecks.